When I was 10, my father, older sister, and I went to Walmart. My sister and I like to wander alone in the stores, so my father had invested in 3 walkie-talkies. I was by myself, walking through the bedding section because I was getting a new bedspread. I was looking intently at one when I felt like I was being watched. I looked over at the beginning of the aisle and saw a large man in overalls and dirty brown hair. He was just staring at me. I decided to walk the other direction and speed walk to the pet section, asking my father, through the walkie-talkie, where he was. He didn't answer. I made it to the dog food section and was happily next to another shopper when he walked by the aisle. Thinking he didn't see me, I let out a sigh of relief. I asked my father again where he was, and again, there was no answer. I felt like things were safe when I turned around and this man was at the end of the aisle, standing there. I quickly walked away with the plan to head to the customer service desk to ask them to call my father. As I walked, parallel to me, this man was matching my steps. He was keeping me from reaching the front of the store. I changed directions, trying to lose him. In my 10-year-old mind, I thought running to the bathroom would be safe. I ran and hid in a stall. I heard his footsteps as he entered and saw his shoes below the stall door. Then I heard an angry woman's voice say, "Hey, get out of here, you pervert." The woman knocked on the stall door and asked, "Are you okay?" I opened it up and hugged her and started to cry. I told her everything and she walked with me, holding my hand to the customer service desk. She waited with me until my father showed up. I told him what happened, and despite the lady verifying it, he didn't believe me. This happened about a year ago, last summer. I'm 20 now, but I was 18 at the time. I used to live in a town that gets very hot during the summer, about 95 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit every single day. I went to my local Walmart to do some light shopping and pick up a pair of flip-flops. As I was in the shoe aisle, I noticed an older guy, probably in his late 30s or 40s, just standing there too. My town has a good amount of drug users and he appeared to be one of them. When he saw me, he started to say really gross, sexual things to me. I'm used to being catcalled and experienced this sort of thing, so I just ignored him and picked out a pair of shoes and continued with my shopping. He followed me down a few more aisles and then stopped following me. After I paid for my things, I leave out of the exit of the shop towards the parking lot. The Walmart is part of the strip mall with other stores, so I started walking right towards the end of the strip mall to catch the bus back home. After walking about 20 seconds, I noticed the man standing next to a car in the parking lot, talking to someone in it. He sees me and breaks away from the car and begins to head in my direction. I continue walking right, and he begins to walk parallel next to me in the road, about 10 feet away, still yelling really gross things to me. At this point, this is more than just creepy comments in the store. He's outright following me. I noticed that I was approaching the entrance to a local pizza place, so I ran inside. I told the girl at the counter that there was some guy following me outside, and I asked if I could stay inside for a few minutes until he left. She let me and also sent 2 male coworkers out to walk around to see if they could find him. Unfortunately, they didn't, so I decided to stay about 10 minutes before I left to go to the bus stop. When I got to the bus stop, there were 2 women there who, when I told them what happened, promised to stay with me and talk to me to keep me company. Luckily, the guy never followed me again, but this whole situation was just creepy. So my little sister and I were shopping at Walmart. We got done and went with our bags to the little sitting area in the mall next to Walmart to see if we were hungry enough to get food. In just a few minutes, a tall, blond, and slender man wearing a yellow coat stood in front of us. He asked us, "Did you just go get food?" We looked at each other and said, "Yeah, why?" He just glared at us and he walked away. He left for about 10 seconds, and as soon as my sister and I were about to leave, he came back saying that God hated us and that we would be punished. "You are both sinners," he starts yelling at us right in front of the mall. He yells about God, pointing his finger at us like we were doing something shameful just sitting there. People stopped to watch, but no one really helped us. He just continued to yell for a while. I grabbed my little sister's arm and stood up to leave, and he stood in my face and started to yell before a guy's voice said, "Dude, just chill out and leave him alone." The guy in the other coat looked around and then took off. From somewhere behind us, a female mall cop showed up and asked us if we were okay and if we knew that guy. We said the obvious. We didn't, but we were okay. As we were leaving the mall a few minutes later, we saw the guy again. He yelled, "God will tell me where you live. I will find you and I will make you pay for your sins." Thankfully, God obviously never texted or called him back. Otherwise, we may be seeing this guy again. This happened a little over a year ago at this point. I was working the night shift at a smaller Walmart that shared a parking lot with a dollar store. I know everybody assumes that Walmart is a magnet for creeps and the night shift seems like it would just increase the encounters, but surprisingly, I very rarely have any incidents with strange people. Like I said, I work the night shift, so that usually goes from 11 p.m. to 8 a.m., and I work 5 days a week. The most I'd see was the occasional homeless person that would scare the daylights out of me after I'd accidentally stumble upon them, but other than that, it wasn't too bad. My job was maintenance, but since we didn't have any overnight cart pushers, I was usually the one sent out to go collect carts. Our Walmart was actually pretty popular at night, despite its size and the time of night. This meant I was almost constantly being sent out to go collect carts for the first half of my shift. This was how I ran into one of the weirdest encounters with a stranger I think I'd ever had while working at Walmart, or anywhere for that matter. While gathering carts around 2 a.m., I saw a very old-looking van pull into the entrance between the Walmart and the dollar store. Although it ultimately parked in the empty dollar store parking lot, I got a good look at it for the first time. It was in awful condition and it made a loud squeaking noise every time the tires made a full rotation. The exterior was covered in rust and several of the windows seemed to be broken. But the thing that stood out to me the most was, and I kid you not, in purple spray paint the words said, "Free children's bikes." This was the thing that just really creeped me out, and it wasn't just this creepy van, but the fact that it pulled into a dollar store parking lot. But obviously the store was closed. I still had a lot of cards to go gather, but I couldn't stop looking over at the van. Things just got creepier the more I looked at it. The interior was completely dark and I couldn't see anyone inside of it. I never heard anyone leave the van, and I was the only one in the parking lot other than the person in the van, and it just gave me the creeps. Eventually I had to go and gather cards from the outskirts of the parking lot, some of which were even in the dollar store's parking lot. I knew I had to go collect them. My manager would throw a fit if I wasn't doing my job because of a creepy van. So I just sucked it up and went over to grab them. When I got close to the van, its headlights suddenly turned on and they were so bright it blinded me for a moment. At first I was terrified I was about to be run over, but the van stood still. After standing there like an idiot, I realized I was probably the one looking like a creep to this person. So I went back to gathering carts and got them all sorted out as quickly as I could. But as I was heading back into the store, I heard the loud creak of the van door opening. I looked back long enough to see a man with long, greasy black hair. He had tattered clothes and he just looked like he was a mess, and he seemed to be heading towards the store's entrance. Towards me. I got back into the store right then and there. At least then I'd be around my other coworkers and we'd have strength in numbers in case something went wrong. I mentioned something to my manager about it, but he told me not to make a big deal about it and just get back to work. I didn't expect much sympathy from him anyway, but it really did suck. Getting back to my normal work routine, I got a dust mop and began sweeping up the floor. As I went through the aisles, I'd often pass some of the overnight stockers filling up the shelves, but other aisles were just empty. Around 15 minutes into my sweeping, I turned around a corner into the pet food aisle, and that's where I saw him. He didn't have a card or any items in his hand. It was immediately clear that he wasn't in the aisle for the pet food, but he was there for me. He walked up in front of me and started saying something to me. I say something because it was legitimately hard to understand him. He slurred his words so hard, and it didn't help that I'm hard of hearing. I asked him to repeat himself, and all I really heard was, "Tell somebody that he doesn't work here anymore." I didn't really catch the name, but I'm pretty sure that's what he wanted to say. I told him I didn't know what that meant, and he just kept going on, and I legitimately could not understand him. Eventually, I told him to go contact one of my supervisors for more help, and that's when he just screamed, "No!" I wasn't sure what to do, so I just backed away, and I was ready to run. But he didn't chase after me. He just backed out of the aisle and, well, turned away. Maybe he just knew I was going to go to a manager or something. Everything remained normal for a while after that, and at 3 a.m. I clocked out for my scheduled lunch. I'm not much of a people person, so I avoided the break room or other common places during lunch. Instead, I would go eat out in my car where I could listen to my own radio stations and I could just be in peace. What I'd usually do is lift up the divider between the driver's and passenger seat, and I'd lay across the seat. It'd give me an hour to just lay down for a bit anyways, so I'd usually just lay my head against the driver's side window because it was nice and cold. This night, around 30 minutes into my break, I felt that distinct feeling that I was being watched. I looked over my shoulder outside the window, and there he was, standing right outside of my driver's side door. My heart felt like it skipped a beat, and I just panicked. I just wanted to know what this guy wanted from me. Was it because I kept looking at his van? In the moment, I was so glad I was always paranoid. Something like this would happen, and because of that, I would lock my doors every time I ate in my car. I started my car, and I quickly pulled out of the spot I was parked in. I just drove off and out of the parking lot. I didn't need to be back for another 30 minutes anyways, so I just drove around for a while to take my mind off of things. I pulled back into the Walmart parking lot around 20 minutes later, and I saw the dollar store with 3 or 4 police cars with their sirens going off, surrounding the van. I went back inside, clocked in, and thankfully didn't see the guy anywhere. I asked my manager what was up with the cars, and he said he had a customer complain about it and had them call the cops. I didn't see the guy ever again, but I had nightmares about it for a week. Thankfully, I ended up getting an internship later, and I was able to quit that job because it wasn't the same after that.